The banks just smashed the paper price down to 69.9, and they want you to believe the whole move is over. They want you to believe silver was just another speculative bubble that popped, and now we all go back to normal. They are lying to you. Not just a little lie. This is a lie of omission so massive that it turns the spot price into a distraction. Because while everyone was staring at a ticker, while algorithms were dumping contracts, and commentators were celebrating the top, something happened in the real world that makes 69.9 irrelevant. Refineries just halted orders, and when refineries stop taking orders, that is not a headline about price. That is a headline about availability. That is the nightmare scenario, the moment the market quietly switches from price discovery to rationing. So in this 4-part deep dive, I'm going to explain what that really means, why it happens, and why it is the exact mechanism that can make silver cheap on a screen and impossible to buy in reality. I'm going to walk you through the supply chain that almost nobody talks about. I am going to do the math that the mainstream avoids, the math of thin inventories and industrial pull. And then I am going to show you how to think about positioning, not with hype, but with mechanics, so you do not get shaken out by paper volatility while the physical market is screaming the opposite message. First, you need to understand something basic. There are two silver markets living on top of each other. The paper market is where the headline price is born. Futures, swaps, unallocated accounts, leverage, volume, endless churn. It is liquid, it is fast, and it is designed for trading. The physical market is where silver has to be melted, refined, assayed, turned into deliverable form, moved, insured, stored, and actually handed over. That market is slower, tighter, and it breaks in ways the paper market does not. When a refinery halts orders, it is basically the physical market telling you, we cannot keep up. Not in a dramatic way, not with sirens, just with silence. Suddenly there is no quote, or the quote comes with conditions, minimum size jumps, premiums jump, delivery times stretch, allocations get prioritized. If you are a small buyer, you get pushed to the back of the line. And if you are a retail buyer trying to buy a few bars or coins, you learn the most painful truth in commodities. If the pipe is clogged upstream, you can have all the money in the world and still not get the metal on the timeline you want. Now, why would a refinery halt orders in the first place? People hear that and they imagine some dramatic shutdown. Sometimes it is energy costs. Sometimes it is compliance or capacity. Sometimes it is feedstock, because refineries do not magically create silver. They process it. They rely on doré from mines, scrap from recycling, and intermediate products coming in on schedule. If that flow gets disrupted, or if demand surges beyond what they can process, the rational decision is to stop taking new orders rather than promise delivery they cannot guarantee. But here is the key. A refinery halting orders does not need to be permanent to be devastating. The physical silver market does not carry huge extra inventories. It runs lean. It runs on just-in-time assumptions, just-in-time shipping, just-in-time blanks, just-in-time refining capacity. And in a lean system, a small disruption creates a big downstream shock. That is why you can see a dip on a chart at the exact moment buyers in the real market are being told, sorry, we cannot deliver. This is where the nightmare scenario begins. Because if you are watching only the paper price, you think you are getting a bargain. Silver is down, I should be able to buy cheaper. But when the refinery pipe tightens, the real price stops being spot plus a normal premium. The real price becomes spot plus whatever premium it takes to pull metal out of a stressed system. Or the real price becomes, call us back in 4 weeks. Or the real price becomes, we can sell it to you, but we are not locking it until we actually have it. And the delivery is whenever it is, whenever it is. So let me make it concrete. Imagine you try to buy at 69.90. You open your usual dealers, you expect a normal spread. Instead you see out of stock, you see pre-order, you see limit 2 per customer, you see ship in 10 to 20 business days. Or you see something even more revealing, call for price. That phrase is one of the loudest alarms in the entire metals world, because it means the price is moving faster than the supply chain can manage, and sellers are protecting themselves from getting run over. And this is why spot becomes irrelevant. Spot is not a promise that a refinery will take your order. Spot is not a guarantee that blanks exist for coins. Spot is not a guarantee that the wholesale market has spare 1,000-ounce bars sitting around waiting for you. Spot is a reference point for a financial market. In normal times, physical tracks it. In abnormal times, physical detaches, and the detachment is the signal. Now we need to slow down and walk through the chain, because this is where most people get lost. Silver starts as ore. It gets concentrated, it gets smelted. It becomes doré, which is an impure bar that still contains other metals. That doré goes to a refinery. The refinery has to separate, purify, and produce silver in a form that meets specification. Then it goes into industrial products or into investment products. Those investment products are not just silver. They are minted coins, poured bars, stamped bars, rounds, and all of that requires additional steps, additional capacity, and additional bottlenecks. So when someone says refineries halted orders, you should not picture a single factory. You should picture a choke point in a global flow system. And the reason that matters is because the downstream market, especially retail, is the weakest link. Retail depends on the leftovers after the industrial chain and the wholesale chain have taken what they need. Retail gets the portion that can be fabricated, packaged, and shipped. If the upstream choke point tightens, retail is the first place you feel it. This is also why the public always learns about a physical silver squeeze late. The paper market can be smashed in minutes. The physical market breaks in slow motion. First, it is longer shipping times. Then it is wider premiums. Then it is product gaps. Then it is one refinery quietly pausing. Then it is multiple refineries stacking backlogs. By the time headlines say shortage, the shortage has already been happening for weeks. It just took that long for the symptoms to reach the surface. So the next question is obvious. Why now? Why would refineries halt orders right as the paper price is whipping around? And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because it points to something larger than a one-day move. It points to structural stress. You have a world where industrial demand for silver is not just steady, it is rising in ways that are not optional. Solar does not negotiate. Electronics do not negotiate. Grid build-out does not negotiate. Defense and high reliability applications do not negotiate. They will pay. They will secure supply. They will sign contracts. And when they do that, the free-floating portion of silver gets smaller. At the same time, investor demand is not dead. It is just episodic. When people feel calm, demand fades. When people feel scared, demand spikes. And the spikes matter because the system is thin. A modest surge in investment buying can stress fabrication, stress refining, and stress distribution. That is how you get the weirdest combination in markets, a falling paper price with a tightening physical market. It feels backwards until you remember that paper is a game of positioning and leverage, and physical is a game of metal moving through pipes. Now let us do the math, because the math is where the nightmare scenario becomes real. Think of the physical market like a warehouse system with shock absorbers. Those shock absorbers are inventories. How much metal is sitting around in readily available form, not already spoken for, not already contracted, not already allocated. People assume that number is huge because the world has mined a lot of silver historically. But historical mining does not equal available inventory. A lot of it is gone into products. A lot of it is dispersed. A lot of it is in forms that are not easily mobilized. The part that matters is what can actually be delivered into the market quickly. If refineries halt orders, it is often because they cannot expand throughput instantly, and because the demand on the other side is coming in waves. That creates a queue, and queues create premiums. Premiums are the market's way of triaging. They are the signal of scarcity. When the queue gets long enough, sellers stop quoting because quoting becomes dangerous. They would be promising metal they do not have, at a price that might be obsolete in an hour. Here is the brutal truth. In a stressed physical market, the price is not a single number. It is a range defined by availability. If you want immediate delivery, you pay a high premium or you cannot buy. If you are willing to wait, you might get closer to spot, but you accept timing risk. If you are a big buyer with relationships, you get priority. If you are small, you get whatever is left. That is why you cannot buy at 69.90. Because 69.90 is not the price of a deliverable ounce in the moment the chain is constrained. It is the price of a financial reference. This is also why paper dumps can be a gift. I know that sounds insane. When you watch the chart, it feels like pain. But when you understand the mechanics, you realize a paper dump can temporarily lower the reference price while the physical premium is already climbing. That is the window where the screen tells you cheap, but the supply chain tells you hurry. That window closes fast, because once the physical scarcity becomes obvious, premiums jump again, and then the paper price catches up in a violent way. Now, I want to be careful here, because people love to turn this into conspiracy theater. You do not need a secret meeting in a dark room to explain why the paper price can move against physical signals. All you need is a leveraged market where big players can move liquidity, where margin rules can force liquidation, and where algorithms chase momentum. The paper market can create temporary distortions. The physical market corrects those distortions, but it corrects them on its own timeline. And refinery halts are one of the clearest signs that the correction pressure is building. So what is the nightmare scenario, really? It is not just silver goes up. That is the simplistic version. The nightmare scenario is that the market bifurcates. The screen price becomes a number you argue about on social media, while the real world operates on allocation, relationships, and premiums. It becomes like trying to buy a critical component during a supply shock. The price is whatever it is, if you can even get it. And if you cannot, you are forced to settle for substitutes, delays, or contracts that are not what you thought you were buying. In that scenario, the most dangerous mistake you can make is assuming that a lower paper price means you can wait. Waiting is how people get trapped. They wait for a perfect entry, while the availability is draining. Then when they finally decide to act, they find out the product is gone, or the premium is insane, or the delivery time is months. And then they blame manipulation, when the real story is that the physical chain is tight and they did not respect the signal. So now we pivot from diagnosis to action, because knowledge without action is useless. And I am not telling you what to buy. I am telling you how to think, so you do not get played by the mismatch between paper and physical. The first lane is physical, and the rule in this lane is simple. Pay for ounces, not artwork. In tight markets, the prettiest products carry the most premium and the worst liquidity. What you want, if your goal is exposure to metal, is the most direct path to weight with the fewest bottlenecks. You care about availability, deliverability, and credibility of source. If a refinery halt is real, then the ability to actually source metal becomes more valuable than squeezing an extra dollar off a theoretical spot price. The second lane is paper and accounts, and this is where you have to be brutally honest about what you actually own. A lot of people think they own silver when they really own a claim. They own an IOU. They own exposure. In normal times, that is fine. In abnormal times, it matters whether you have allocated metal, whether you can take delivery, and what the fine print says about substitutions and delays. In a refinery halt scenario, the weakest promise is the one that depends on someone else sourcing metal in a stressed market on your behalf. The third lane is the upstream and the producers. When physical scarcity shows up, the market eventually starts bidding for future supply. That can benefit miners and refiners and royalty structures, but only if you understand the difference between headline leverage and real leverage. Some companies are hedged, some are jurisdiction risk, some have cost structures that explode when energy rises, some cannot scale, so you cannot just buy a ticker and assume it is a silver proxy. You need to understand whether it can actually deliver more ounces into a market that is screaming for them. Now, let us talk about timing, because this is where people get emotional. You are going to see volatility. If refineries are halting orders, the system is under stress, and stressed systems lash out. You can get a smash down on paper followed by a gap up. You can get a week of chop that makes everyone feel stupid. You can get headlines that contradict each other. One day the story is silver crashes. The next day the story is shortage. That is not because reality is confused. It is because paper trading is noise and physical flow is signal, and they move at different speeds. So here is what you watch in the coming days. Not the candle patterns, not the hot takes. You watch availability, you watch premiums, you watch delivery times, you watch whether wholesalers are quoting normally or going silent. You watch whether the market starts using words like allocation, delay, backorder, and substitution. Those words are the body language of a tightening system. If the refinery halts are temporary and the chain normalizes, you will see it there first. Premiums will ease, delivery times will shrink, products will restock, quotes will stabilize. But if the refinery halts are a symptom of deeper stress, you will see the opposite. The market will stop offering you certainty. It will offer you maybe. And maybe is the most expensive word in commodities because it means you are no longer buying metal, you are buying a spot in line. And that brings us back to 69.90. The reason you cannot buy silver at 69.90 is not because the number is wrong. It is because the number is incomplete. It does not include the cost of scarcity. It does not include the cost of time. It does not include the cost of a clogged pipeline. It is a reference number from a paper market that can be pushed around, especially in moments of high leverage and forced liquidation. But when refineries halt orders, the paper game starts to lose control because the real world does not care about your chart. The real world cares about material in hand. It cares about inventory on a shelf. It cares about throughput and lead times and contracts. And that is why refinery halts are so important. They are the physical market whispering before it starts screaming. So let me land this with a simple idea you can carry forward. The banks are looking at the weekly chart. You need to be looking at the supply chain. You need to be looking at the choke points. You need to be looking at the parts of the system that cannot be scaled overnight, because those are the places where price discovery breaks first. If you remember one line from this entire video, make it this. In a refinery halt scenario, the price is not what you see. The price is what you can actually buy. And when you cannot buy at 69.90, that is not a disappointment. That is the message. That is the nightmare scenario beginning when the market stops asking, what is silver worth? And starts asking, who gets silver at all? This is not financial advice. It is a reality check. The screen can say anything it wants. The physical market tells the truth, slowly, brutally, and then all at once. And if refineries are halting orders, the truth is that the system is tighter than the chart is admitting.